All right, so I want to talk about the while loop. So I have this file open in Dreamweaver and on the left, and then over here in my localhost, I have that file open, and you see there's nothing on it right now. Okay, so I'm going to show you how the while loop works. Um, First of all, the thing that we have to do is have some variables that we can use. So over here, I've got this comment in my PHP tags that says initialize variables. We're going to set two variables. So I'll set a variable called a, and I'll have it equal to 0. So that'll be like our counter. In fact, let's just call that counter so that you have some idea of what that is. And then we're going to have b, which is going to be the other variable that we can use as a test condition. Okay, so b, let's say, is going to be 30. So what we want to do is be able to count up to 30. While the thing is counting, then we can do something every time the condition is met. So let's figure out how to do that. I'm going to just paste something here so you can see real quick. And this is the general syntax. It's not real, of course, it's just talking in English, but this is saying while. Okay, so while is going to be the control structure that we're using, and then in parentheses, sort of like an if statement, right? So we're going to put the thing that we need to evaluate. So it says test evaluates to be true. Well, I'm not saying that it has to, be true. It could be false, but while the test evaluates to be true, then it will continue on to do something. If, however, this test evaluates to be false, then it will stop and it won't keep going. Okay, so this is very much, if you look at this, is very, very similar to the if conditional syntax. So with if, we would have said if. All right, so it would say if something tests out to be true, then we'll do something. Well, while is going to be just like that, except for the difference is that while is going to loop once it hits the end of this curly brace. If that thing did evaluate to be true, it'll come back up here into the beginning line again to test it to see if it is still true. So it'll keep doing that over and over and over until it finally evaluates to be false. And at that time, when it is finally false, it will stop. Now that should also tell you that there's a very good chance that you can make a mistake. And if you don't set up your testing parameters properly, then you could potentially have something that will never evaluate to be false. And what that would do is send you into an endless loop. And it could actually bring the server down potentially, or your computer if you're on your local testing environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, first of all, how we could write this as a test condition. So let's say while A is, or actually, let's say while B is greater than A. So as long as B is greater than A, then we will do something. Well, you can see right off the bat, if you just look up here, that B right now is set to be 30, and you see that A is set to be 0. So as long as B, which is now 30, is greater than A, which is now 0, that will evaluate to be true. We can come down here and do something. So in the do something part, let's go ahead and let's just say that we want to echo and we're going to echo A because A is the counter. A is the thing that's going to potentially keep changing. All right, so we're going to echo A. If I were to leave it just like this right now, the way it is, then that would be an endless loop. It would be a problem because I am not actually doing anything to change A. Therefore, B will always be greater than A, and then it would just continue to echo A. Let's just do a test. I'll save that. By the way, this is bad. You might not even want to test it. You might just want to see what happens when I refresh my page. See, I get nothing but zeros, and you see here it keeps spinning, spinning, spinning. I'm going to stop so that it doesn't like crash my computer. So that is an example of a poorly written endless loop because even though my test condition in theory could work out okay, I'm not doing anything to change the state of A so that it will iterate. If I come down here then and go on the next line and say A++, so that I iterate it up 1, so A is going to equal itself plus 1, then the next time it comes up here to do its test, it will have been 0, then it will be 1, then it will be 2, then it will be 3, all the way up until finally it gets to the number 30, and then at that point, when it goes to test itself, it will fail because B will not be greater than A. Okay, so let's do a test here. And the other thing too is you'll notice in my echo up here, I didn't separate it with commas or anything like that. So let's do this where I actually go over and concatenate a break tag, just so that we have something there. And that's the way that I could do that. Save it, come back and test, and you see that it refreshes and it goes ahead and it prints. Now you see what it's doing is it's only printing 0 through 29. Well, that is because we're saying while, or as long as, b is less, or excuse me, while b is greater than a. Well, b itself is 30, right? So whenever we compare b and say is 30 greater than 30, when by the time a actually gets to be 30, well, 30 is not greater than 30. 30 is 30. So if we wanted, if that mattered to us, then what we could do is we could say greater than or equal to, right? And then if we save it, hit refresh, and you see it adds the 30 at the end. Now the other thing that I want to note, I want you to pay attention to is that when we are at the end here, at the end of the loop, let me show you something. If I come down after the loop is over and I say echo A, you might have a hypothesis here. Okay, let's just save this, refresh, and you see it puts the number 31 down here. Why is that? Well, because whenever it finally gets to number 30, all right, so we go here and it says while 30 is greater than or equal to 30, then go ahead and do that. Well, 30 is greater than or equal to 30. So what it does is it goes ahead and it echoes A, which is 30, right here on the left side of the screen. But then it still iterates A. It's still going to iterate A one more time. And so that means that after the loop is done, if this matters to you, after the loop is done, A is going to be iterated one more time, and it's actually going to equal 31. If that bothers you, then what you would need to do then is come in here and put a condition so that you could test to see what the value of 30 or what the value of A was, and you know, if it matches a certain value, then you don't want to iterate it. That's one option. The other thing that you could do very simply is if you know that this is the way that the structure is going to be built, then you could in fact just take this equal sign off like that if you needed to also echo the A down at the end. And so then that way 30 will never be greater than 30 or whatever this final number happens to be. And then, but you know that it also is going to iterate it one more time. So then you could come down here and just echo A. So if I save that, it's going to get rid of that 31. And if that's really your goal is to print 0 through 30, or 0 through whatever this B value happens to be, then this is one of the ways that you could sort of deal with that. All right, now if we come here and we decide, let's put this in list item form, I'm just going to get rid of this echo A down here. And instead of putting break tags, you know, one of the things that of course we could do is put list items around. So I'm going to go ahead where it says while B is greater than A, and I'm going to end my PHP tag right here after the first curly brace, and then I'm going to go ahead after the echo line and I'm going to start a new PHP tag. And you might be going, well, what about all this? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just print this out in HTML so that it's really simple. So I can just say list item, and then I can put my ending tag, and then inside of that is where, if I want, I can go and I can put my PHP tags and then echo A, like that. Okay, and so this is one of the ways that I could address this issue where I'm trying to create list items in a really simple way. Okay, and then of course I would need an unordered list tag somewhere, so I could come up here and I could put that up above where I initialize. But if I really want to be kind of succinct about the way I'm writing my code, maybe I'd want to initialize my tags like this, and then come down here and restart my PHP tags so that if I needed to do anything in between, I could do that. And this is just something that kind of is happening up top. All right, so this is where I would want to probably go and add my unordered list tag. And then down here at the bottom is where I would want to go and end it. Okay, so here we've got our complete unordered list where we're saying UL and then end UL, and in between that we've got our PHP. All right, so we've got our while loop that's saying as long as B is greater than A, then it ends the PHP tag, but it doesn't actually end the loop. We're still inside the loop printing HTML, so we're printing list items, and then inside of the list item we break back into our PHP embedded code and we echo out the value of A, end list item, and then we go back into PHP again. It ends the loop, right? And if you wanted, you could be really succinct here and say end of while loop. Okay, let's save that. Let's hit refresh over here, and you see then it turns it into a list. The other thing that's good about loops is that you can put conditions inside of them that are nested inside. So right after the opening curly brace of the loop, I'm going to drop my ending PHP tag down a little bit. And let's say that the condition that we want to test for is odd and even. Well, there's a way to do that. We can use the modulo operator to divide something by 2. And remember, if you divide something by 2 and you get a 0 remainder, then you know it's even, right? Well, modulo will always give you a product that is actually the remainder of a division expression. So what we'll do here is we'll say remainder. I'm going to create a variable called remainder, and it's going to equal A is what we've been testing. That's the counter. Okay, so we're going to say A modulo 2. So what this is going to do now is that every single time this loop runs through, and basically every time it iterates, it is going to create a new instance of the variable remainder, and it's going to set the value of it to be a modulo 2, which is going to give us, basically what it's going to do is say a divided by 2 equals whatever, and then whatever's left over is the remainder. The remainder is the actual product of this operation, and it's going to set the remainder variable to be that. So then what we can do is we can test it every single time it iterates through to see if it equals 0 or if it equals something else. If it equals something else, then we know it's odd, right? Okay, so let's do that on the next line. We can either use a ternary statement to figure this out, or we could use an if statement. Because if is sort of an easier thing to wrap your head around if you're not used to writing ternary statements, let's start by writing if statement, and then we can always turn it in to a ternary statement later. So essentially, we're going to say if, and let's go ahead and put our syntax in here. So what we're testing to see is if remainder, let's do that, is equal, and I'm putting 2 equal signs, remember, because I'm asking a question, I'm not actually setting a variable. So I'm saying if remainder is equal to 0, then if it's true, then it's going to be even. And what is going to be even? Well, let's make something called class, and let's have that be called even, okay? And there. And then if it's not, so we need an else statement down here, so else, and then basically if it's false, then we need to say class is equal to odd, right? So if you want, you can pause that and think about the logic of it, all right? But let's save this. And the thing that we need to do now to see if it's going to even work is we need to be able to go down here in our list item, and we need to say class. So we need to give it an attribute of class equals, and then inside of the quotation marks is where we can print out class right here, right? Because it's either going to be even or it's going to be odd. So we'll do our PHP tags, and we'll say echo the variable of class, like that. Let's save. Let's come over here and let's test. And it looks the same, but if we were to right click and inspect this element in Google Chrome Inspector, then you can see that here it is in fact applying them properly. 0 is even, 1 is odd, 2 is even, 3 is odd, and so forth. So it is doing it correctly. So if we wanted to come up to the very top of our HTML inside of the head, we could just, I'm going to paste some stuff so you don't have to watch me type it, save it, refresh, and you see now suddenly I've got all these styles. And they're corresponding to these classes that I created over here, like I said, odd, and then here's even. And remember, these are being applied because down here we have the class being determined by this variable of class. And remember, we're figuring that out and assigning the name odd and even. And so when it gets printed here as odd or even, that's how this class knows how to target with these particular rules.